Welcome, everybody, to the Nuggets Repeat Rally live from number 38 in Rhino. My name is Shawn Drotar, the host of Sandy and Shawn, with my co-host Sandy Clough at 4 to 6 p.m. every weeknight on Mile High Sports. But tonight, as we break this game down from number 38 in Rhino, my partner is the man from Denver Stiffs, Zach Mikash. Zach, thanks so much for joining us today. Obviously, a bad loss for the Nuggets. The Nuggets lose to the Timberwolves at home, 111 to 98. They never really came to play in this game, which is disappointing because this game was for first place in the Western Conference. And by losing it, the Nuggets, courtesy of the Thunders win over the Suns, drop all the way to third.
Down to third. Yeah. I mean, as it was advertised as the biggest game of the season, right? The Nuggets clearly did not feel the same way. They came out completely flat. The first quarter, not so bad, but the second quarter, they get completely sunk there, and they spend the rest of the game basically just trade and serve and being happy with a double-digit loss. That it was a tough game to watch from a effort standpoint.
It really was, and I think that's the biggest question that I have in this case, because when you're talking about this Nuggets team, I get it. They're the champs. They're in great position for a reason. They're obviously a very talented team, and yes, we know they're missing Jamal Murray, but tonight, that's not an excuse because the Timberwolves are missing Karl Anthony Towns.
Right.
So the effort lacking, and this has been to a certain extent, even though the Nuggets have had a really good March in the win-loss column, they have been playing with their food with regularity. The number of games in which they were down double digits to teams they do not belong down double digits to, with the exception of the Memphis game lately where they cruised from wire to wire, this seems to be a bit of a problem. The Nuggets have been playing disinterested basketball and then just kind of wake up enough to go ahead and polish off some bad teams. But my concern here, Zach, is we've seen teams get to the playoffs and assume that when they reach for the switch, that everything's going to turn on and be fine. But it doesn't always work that way. Are you concerned a little bit about the approach the Nuggets have had over the last 2-3 weeks?
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. Like you said, I mean, we've seen even games where they were up big in the first half. They come out in the third quarter and give up. What was the game they were a few weeks back? They gave up a 44-24 third quarter. End up pulling it out in the end. But it's got to be a concern somewhat. At the same time, Shawn, they coasted at the end of last year, and then they totally proved they can flip that switch.
But they had a big lead.
They
in
did.
The conference
they
last
did.
Year.
So is it more important? I guess. Do you think how much was the first seed last year important, or can they flip the switch as a 3 seed this year and still, go win a game on the road if they have to?
And maybe they can. I mean, they're certainly talented enough. That if you look by record, obviously Boston still has the league's top record, but the Nuggets, at least prior to tonight's game, had the best record in the West and had beaten Boston the 2 times they played them. So they're certainly good enough, and they're certainly good enough when they're whole. But it is concerning, I think, to be this cavalier. Pun not intended, given their next opponent. But the idea that this team can just kind of have things pop on. And I guess there's a part of me that looks at it and thinks, if they're going to, let's just say it, half-ass their way through a game.
Yeah.
Why is Nikola Jokic still in there up until 45 seconds remaining?
No doubt. And you know what? And it even becomes a bigger issue, or becomes a bigger highlight when you think about why are they missing Jamal Murray? Because he twisted his ankle up 16 with a minute left against the Knicks, right? So why are we continuing to risk it if Coach Malone is true to his word and saying that, we don't care about the 1 seed as much as we care about being healthy, then why are these guys in these games, whether they're up by double digits or down by double digits, in the last few minutes of the fourth quarter? It's already come to bite them once. So if it's truly about we need to care more about health than getting the 1 seed, that's hard for me to believe right now when you're putting these guys out there in games that are clearly wrapped up.
Right. I think that's the thing. Look, when it was, you could make a run maybe in the third quarter after a bad first half. And if you make a run, then that's intriguing. But when it was very obvious, really midway through the third quarter, they didn't have it tonight. At that point, I think the strategy needs to start changing and resting guys. And Jokic in particular, who still in this disastrous game finished with 37 minutes. I know he finished with 32 points. 10 boards, 5 assists, 2 steals. That's great. But it doesn't mean anything because it's in a bad loss.
Right.
And so what, given the stats? The better thing would be for Nikola Jokic to not be out there on his feet, banging around with Rudy Gobert if he doesn't have to. And that, to me, is confusing. In this bad a game, Jokic 37 minutes, Porter Jr. 36 minutes, Aaron Gordon 31 minutes, KCP with 28 in part, maybe even yanked as we actually do this right after the game finishes. We're not really able to go in and listen to Coach Malone and all the things we normally would. KCP minus 15 in that plus minus.
Minus 15, 0 points.
And 0 points. Not a good game for him. Not that it really lands on him, but we were talking about it before we started here, and the game was well out of reach. They don't have Karl Anthony Towns in Minnesota.
Right.
And Anthony Edwards, who the Nuggets and most teams don't usually have an answer for. Anthony Edwards had a bad game tonight. 8 for 19 from the field. And the Nuggets still weren't in it.
They wasted it. Yeah, they absolutely wasted an opportunity.
51.4% shooting
from
the Grizzlies today.
And that is a statement.
51%.
That is a statement on their defense and their energy and their effort. It was, you don't shoot that well if you're not wide open. And the Timberwolves were consistently wide open, consistently had easy lanes to the basket tonight. And when you watch that game, it wasn't a matter of they're out executing the Nuggets. It was a matter of the Nuggets aren't bringing the same level of energy that the Timberwolves. It is very clear that Minnesota wanted this game more than Denver did. Now, whether that's arrogance on Denver's part, whether that's, maybe if you want to go the other way, say it's smart by they didn't put forth their best effort, didn't put forth all of their energy tonight. That it remains to be seen. But without a doubt, what we saw tonight is if you're not willing to be at the level that Minnesota is at, you cannot just flip a switch and coast your way to a victory like you can against a Memphis or a San Antonio. We saw it again in the last game on Wednesday against the Phoenix Suns, another playoff level team. They come out with lackluster energy. They get behind, and then next thing you know, you can't make that up against good teams like this.
Yeah, and the challenge is now the way the Nuggets are looking at it, and there are still games to go, and the Nuggets have one of the easiest schedules remaining in the NBA, not just the West. But this is a Minnesota team that you might have to go through to get back to the finals, and they might end up being the top seed. Right. And we have already seen Minnesota actually gave the Nuggets about as much trouble as anybody did on the way to their title run last year, and they were missing two significant pieces of their puzzle at the time. Now they are in better shape, though they don't have Towns, but they've played very well without him. And the Nuggets either seem disinterested or simply don't have the energy, and then the question is, because you're seeing Jokic and a lot of the starters play big minutes in a game like this, you wonder then, is it a cavalier approach or is it energy? Because I'm trying to think like Michael Malone. If it's the idea that my team isn't terribly invested in this, okay, and then I'm going to pull guys out and say, okay, we're punting this game. We're going to Greg Popovich load management this job and forget about it. Okay. But the fact they're playing long enough tells me that this might very well be more that the Nuggets don't have the requisite energy, and that's why Malone still has them out there trying to wonder if it's going to come back at some point. That part to me is concerning.
Yeah.
Because fatigue is cumulative.
It is. It absolutely is. And, for the Nuggets, someone I do wonder with Malone, too, if it isn't just the old school coach mentality of, hey, you're going to come out here and play like that, then I'm not going to give you the fourth quarter off. Like you're gonna fight through this.
That's another angle on it, too.
That's another angle on it. But would that be the right mentality either? No matter how you want to spin this game, whether it's the Nuggets mailed it in because they didn't feel like it was as important to them as Minnesota, whether it was the Nuggets just didn't have the talent to beat Minnesota without Jamal Murray, whether it was they tried their best and they just got flat out beat. There's no narrative here that spins this well for the Denver Nuggets. And now they got work to do. You lose the tiebreaker tonight with Minnesota. You've already lost the tiebreaker with Oklahoma City. You got to end up a game up on these teams for the 1 seed if that matters. And like we said, it may not. But, man, I don't want to play a Game 7 in Minnesota. I don't want to play a Game 7 in Oklahoma City if it comes down to that.
Not when you can play it in Denver.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Because part of the reason that top seed matters, and I've talked about this on the radio show, and I understand. First and foremost, before we go anywhere, the Nuggets' health is what matters first. That will be the biggest determinant on whether they can make it back to the finals or not if they are healthy. That part has to be prioritized. And so they don't play Jamal Murray. But, of course, then you make the argument that, unfortunately, maybe it's the way you suggested, that Malone's not going to reward bad effort with time off. But then you risk more of the situation, more injuries and lack of rest. So it becomes problematic for this team. Getting the top seed allows you to have a potential 7th game, one, at altitude.
Yep.
That bothers teams, whether it's actual physical or psychological.
Sure.
You're also knowing you have to go through the defending champs in their barn.
Right.
And that's a psychological edge too. And for the Nuggets to basically decide we don't care about it is one thing. If it is more about let's prioritize health, I'm okay with that. But then again, you get the confusion as to why these guys playing so much. This is a hard one to explain. And for the Nuggets now, as you pointed out, not only are they in third, but they've lost the tiebreakers to the 2 teams ahead of them.
Right.
That is a legitimate problem. Now, knowing the rest of their schedule is comparatively soft, they could jump over both of them. But then the question is, how much effort do you want to put forth in some of those games as well? Are the Nuggets going to be okay with saying, you know what, we're just okay with 3?
Sure.
We're not going to try to work that hard to get any higher than 3. Maybe, because at this stage, I still feel like Oklahoma City or Minnesota in a 7-game series probably won't beat the Nuggets, although I'm starting to come around with Minnesota because the argument tonight would be, well, if they had Jamal Murray, and Minnesota can say, well, if we had Karl-Anthony Towns, but both are missing, and Minnesota was the far better team tonight. The other thing to address, Zach, I guess, to look at it is the Nuggets bench. Obviously, when you're going short, Reggie Jackson has to start.
Yep.
That's not great. And when Reggie Jackson probably is on the floor for more than about 12, 15 minutes, some of the cracks begin to show. So the question about the bench is, do they have enough? It's a little late to do anything about it.
Sure.
But I mean, the numbers tonight, Peyton Watson, minus 14 in 11 minutes. He also had no points. There really wasn't anyone else to go to. Colin Gillespie, who'd been coming in of late for a little bit, 5 minutes, minus 8. I mean, the defense broke down top to bottom, and the bench simply bled out any sort of charge the Nuggets might have made back, even if they had made any. How concerned are you about this bench come to the playoff time if, for some reason, Jamal Murray can't play full minutes?
Well, if Jamal can't play full minutes, you're in a world of hurt because you're depending. That puts Reggie Jackson in your starting lineup. You got to play some sort of ball handler off the bench. You can't play Colin Gillespie in the playoffs. That's not a comment on Colin's game at all. You literally cannot play him. He's a two-way player. He's not eligible for the playoffs. So what are you going to do in that scenario? You're sunk. I mean, they have to have Jamal healthy. They have to be able to just put Reggie Jackson off the bench. If you can do that, you tighten up your bench rotation. As we've seen, you're probably only playing 8 guys. It's probably Reggie, Peyton, and Christian Brown. Those are your 3 guys. But as you pointed out, Shawn, the problem is going to be who's going to be the guy who scores for you. Last year in the playoffs, Bruce Brown was that guy. Who do you feel like out of those 3, or even if you want to, throw in a Justin Holiday into this, who do you feel comfortable as being a guy who's going to score? I think the answer is nobody. You're hoping Reggie Jackson gets hot and is playing well, and maybe he can be that guy for you. But again, if Jamal Murray's not healthy and Reggie's having to play in your starting unit, then you're sunk. You're hoping on Christian Brown or Peyton Watson to hit their shots. And as we have seen this season, that is a dicey proposition. Yeah, and I think when you're looking at Christian Brown, I don't think Christian Brown has regressed, but Christian Brown was so good as a rookie. I think people were expecting another leap, and instead you're getting kind of an incremental improvement. But there's a tremendous lack of aggression in Brown's game of late, and it's been for a lot of the season, but it seems to maybe be trending in the wrong direction. And what you're talking about in those situations, especially a guy as well coached as Brown has been throughout his career, as experienced as he's been. We're talking about a guy that's won a state title in high school, NCAA championship, an NBA championship. It's a little disconcerting to see him play such passive ball when especially without Jamal Murray, that you need someone to score. And Christian Brown, to his credit, knows, I'm not out here to score 15, 17 points. It's not really what my skill set is, but somebody's got to do it. And there's still, I think, too much deferring from a guy that, as much as Peyton Watson is athletic and an interesting and intriguing talent, Christian Brown's bent was in this role last year. Right. And he's the guy that it feels like needs to step up, and we're just not seeing it. 100%. I mean, that was clearly the plan of the Denver Nuggets when they elected. I mean, not elected. Bruce Brown got offered a huge contract, but when Bruce Brown left, it was clearly everybody's expectation. Okay, Christian Brown takes that next step, and like you said, when he doesn't have that aggression to the basket, he really you turn him into a jump shooter. That's not a good proposition for the Nuggets.
He was 2 for 10.
2 for 10. Exactly. Yep. Christian Brown is at his best when he is getting to the basket and finishing at the rim. But I also feel like him and Watson both, they're guys who feed off that energy, right? They feed off transition, off of making big plays, off of getting the crowd behind them. So when you have a game like tonight where the energy is just completely lacking, and you're asking a Christian Brown or a Peyton Watson to pick it up themselves, it's a tough ask for those guys. Those guys are not guys that are going to be able to turn that switch on like Jokic or Murray can. And if you don't have those other guys available and you're asking Christian Brown or Peyton Watson to do that, you're going to end up a lot of times like you did tonight.
Nuggets had 4 fast break points tonight. 4 in total.
That's you can't win many games
15
that way.
for the Timberwolves. Not that that's outlandish either, but 4 for the Nuggets. That can't happen. That's awful. The Nuggets their biggest lead was 2. Minnesota had this up to 26. I mean, for the truth of the matter is the 111-98, as bad as that is, actually really disguises how bad this game really was for Denver.
Makes it look a lot closer than it was, because that game was lost. Like I said, it was lost in the second quarter, and they never really mounted. You know, we've seen the Nuggets get down, and as you said, they turn on that switch, they mount that comeback. Whether you want to put that on Minnesota's talent level or just the Nuggets flat out not being able to get that energy up tonight, they did not have that tonight. And what we saw is, if you fall behind a team like this, like Minnesota, then you're gonna be in trouble if you think you can just suddenly come back in the second half.
And things don't really get much easier. The Cleveland Cavaliers come to town on Sunday. They're a good team, and they've been healthy all year. They might be a borderline great team. They're really underrated, and they are a team that can give the Nuggets trouble. It felt like after the loss to Phoenix, this would be a bounce back. And
100%.
It felt like maybe the Nuggets would be hungry. And the fact that they weren't hungry, I think, is the part that's maybe the most frustrating. Quite frankly, the fans that were out at Ball Arena tonight deserved better for their money. They deserved a better performance. They deserved better effort. A loss is a loss. That happens. But it's when it's pretty obvious you don't care about the result of that game that's the concern. And the Nuggets never seem to care about it.
And coming off a game that was just like that. You know, like you said.
2 straight games against teams that are going to be in the playoffs.
Teams you're probably going to see if you want to win a championship.
With star players.
Yeah.
I get it. Kevin Durant is still a great player, and he'll have games where he looked like he looked against the Nuggets. I get that. But if you're the Nuggets and you're looking at the way you turn it on against the Portlands of the world or the Miamis of the world, you get behind them and then you catch up and pass them. That's one thing. But when you're talking about the playoffs and those benches shorten, the Kevin Durants of the world, the Anthony Edwards, they become more important and they become harder to hold off. And I get that the corollary is the same for Nikola Jokic as well. But I guess losing the way they did to Phoenix and then having this effort from Minnesota, this team clearly seems that they're just waiting for the playoffs. And I guess they're probably not going to get past in the 3rd spot. That would be highly unlikely
at this point.
But at the same time, look, the season doesn't end for another 2 weeks. You do not want to just put it on cruise control for 2 weeks and assume in the first round against who might be, I don't know, it might be Phoenix.
Might be New Orleans, might be like Sacramento, a team you have really struggled with this season. You would much rather play the Los Angeles Lakers, a team that you've won 8 straight against.
That's the team you want.
Right. But you're only going to get that team if you're in the 1 seed. You're not going to get them at the 2 or the 3 seed.
Certainly not the 3.
And 3 seed, you're playing a team who's not even in the plan. That's the other thing. Like, you want a team who's in the plan. You want a team who has to be playing while you're resting.
Who have won 5 straight and 9 out of the last 10.
Right. And just
including the Nuggets.
Well.
Right.
Yeah,
and are playing their best ball. So, I mean, the Nuggets are the favorites, and they're the favorites for a reason. And they are certainly good enough. But they aren't good enough to just cruise their way to another title.
Absolutely.
And there is a certain point where you simply can't shut it down. But the Nuggets, when they did that last year, and maybe there's a little bit of, we did it last year and it's fine, but you did it knowing you basically had the top seeds sewn up. If you do that again this year, you're going to be at the 3. I don't think the Clippers will pass you.
No,
8 games left, the Clippers 5 down. I don't think that's going to happen. But basically, if you're just going to accept the 3, that's okay. But at what point do you kind of put it in neutral? And that's the problem, because do you do it a week before? Do you do it for a handful of games?
Right.
When Jamal Murray is feeling good, are you going to rest Jamal Murray all the way to the playoffs? If you're not, do you want to make sure the team is going full bore against San Antonio at the end of the game? I mean, where do you start picking these? And I think that part, as the defending champs, is something we haven't seen Michael Malone in. It's sort of uncharted territory for him.
Yeah, no, it is, and you can get gut. So The Nuggets they're playing with fire. They got what 9 games left to wrap this up and make sure that they're ready for the playoffs.
Zach, how can they find you? Obviously over on Denver Stiffs for all of it, everything Denver Stiffs, of course.
Yep, at Denver Stiffs, or on Twitter, I'm at Zach Mikash. You can find me there as well.
Sorry about, by the way, you have to spell Mikash and Drotar.
Mikash.
Yeah, if you're looking for Mikash and Drotar, there you go. So, mine is S Drotar, SDROTAR. That's the traditional spelling of Drotar, in case you were curious. I'm sure you weren't. Probably from Mikash as well. He's with Denver Stiffs with Mile High Sports. Make sure you check out both sites for the latest on the Nuggets. Thanks to number 38 for having us. They do a terrific job down here. Venue. Make sure you check it out. Venue's terrific. It's a ton of fun. We're sitting here trying to do the post game, and there's also the March Madness on a literal jumbotron outside there to go check out. So it's a tremendous place. All Colorado food, beer, liquor, the whole kit and caboodle. Come check out number 38. It's really nice to be able to be here for the Nuggets repeat rally. He's Zach Mikash. I'm Shawn Drotar. Danny Bailey, who you can't see, and Anil Apir are the two guys that made this all work. We don't even have buttons. We can just sit up here and talk. So thanks to that, most of all of it, thanks to you for listening. We'll be back at the next one. For Zach, I'm Shawn, and this is Mile High Sports.